Atomic Habits Chapter 3, How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. So now that we have an understanding of why habits are important and why they help in shaping our identity to be the type of person that we are, now we can discuss how to build them. Um, so I'm just going to go down the list until I have something to add. So let's start with the first bullet. Behaviors followed by satisfying consequences tend to be repeated, and those that produce unpleasant consequences are less likely to be repeated. I don't know where I read this. I think it was a book, maybe, but it was discussing how to condition children to behave in a certain way. I think it was actually The Giver. Um, there's a book called The Giver. I forgot by who, but there was um, a section in there that discussed where every time a child touched a flower, they got zapped. And over time, as they kept getting zapped, they were afraid of flowers or they didn't like flowers. So they basically got conditioned to not like a certain thing because of the the consequences that they received of being around it. So you can think of habits like that. If you are trying to form a habit that always has a unpleasant consequence, then you're less likely to repeat it. But if you form a habit in such a way that it will lead to a pleasant output, then you're more likely to repeat it. Um, so now we can, I probably should have mentioned this first, but let's ask ourselves what exactly is a habit? A habit is a behavior that has been repeated enough times to become automatic. So, um, whatever you do on a daily basis is considered a habit. As habits are created, brain power to do repeated actions decreases. Your brain learns to lock on certain cues that lead to satisfying consequences. This is where the unconscious mind comes in to play. You're walking and you smell something sweet. Let's say you're walking by a donut shop and you're smelling donuts. Um, you will be inclined to buy a donut. Now, next time you smell that smell again, you that is your cue to buy a donut. That now because the first time you performed that habit, you smelled something, you went in and got a donut, and you enjoyed that donut. There was a pleasant output, so now you're more willing to repeat it the next time you smell something that that smells like a donut. Um, so the more things that you can make habitual, the more you preserve your brain power. So you can think of good habits as a form of meditation, or even better, as a form of conditioning for your brain. Like exercises for muscles, the more you repeat a habit, the easier it becomes for your brain to do it. The end goal of this is automaticity, basically meaning that the actions you want to perform, the good productive habits that you want to perform, the end goal is that they happen automatically. You don't have to force them. Because when you have to force something, that means that it has an unpleasant outcome that you're not looking forward to. But when it becomes habitual, when it becomes automatic, you don't have to worry about the outcome. You don't even have to worry about the process because now the energy to perform that habit is part of your unconscious mind, your non-conscious mind, because you have repeated it so many times it has become automatic. So whenever possible, the conscious mind likes to pawn off activities to the non-conscious mind. This is exactly what happens when you form a habit. If you're always forced to make decisions like when should I work out or when should I sleep, then your freedom becomes limited. Habits allow you to become a decisive person and allocate time for important matters in life rather than the simple tasks you aim to perform daily. I think real creativity in life comes from when you master yourself. And when I say yourself, I mean your habits. Because if you remember from the last chapter, your habits are your identity. Your habits are who you are as a person. So if you are looking to master yourself, step one is master your habits, the habits you perform on a daily basis. What time you're sleeping, what time you're waking up, what time you're eating. When all of that becomes set in stone, you can focus on more important things because now you have more brain power to spend on other creative avenues rather than thinking about when you're going to go to sleep, which a lot of people surprisingly struggle with. I mean, I'm included in that category. I struggle with setting up a sleeping schedule, but over time it's getting better, and that's the whole thing. If you remember from the last chapter, it's all about majority votes. You're not setting yourself out to be a perfect person. You're setting yourself up to try to be a perfect person. So there's a huge difference between being perfect and trying to be perfect. Um, in the effort of making of reaching perfection, you will fall really close to it, and you will see dramatic results in how you live your life and how much free time you end up having. Free time should be quote unquote because no time is free. You're always paying for your time with the efforts you put in. So, moving on, the process of building a habit. So, what are these steps, the four simple steps that James Clear mentioned? So, step number one is cue. Your brain is constantly looking for cues, which signal some sort of reward. In ancient times, in Stone Age, whatever you want to call it, the main cues were for food, water, sex. Sex being, reproduction and moving on and continuing the cycle of the human race. Added on to this in present time, it could be money, fame, friends, and praise. So now we still have these underlying uh, goals or cues for food and water, but because we have such a surplus of it, it's become not the most important thing for us. It's still important, but it's at least in a first world country you can get that. So what else um, are we looking for? What kind of cues are we looking for? We're looking for money, fame, friends, and praise. So these are pretty common cues that exist in our society now. And an example of a cue is, let's say you're bored, so you want to be entertained. And now you being bored is a cue, uh, and now you're going to get a craving, which is step number two. You're going to get a craving to be entertained. Now, the thing about a craving is that without a craving, we have no reason to take action towards a reward or an outcome or result. So craving is more about the feeling of achieving the reward rather than the actual reward itself. You may hear from some people that thinking about the vacation that they were going to take soon was more exciting than actually taking the vacation. That's the craving part. So let's continue with the example. You're bored, so you want to be entertained. So you want to be entertained, so you get a craving to turn on the TV. And now, what comes after the craving? Step number three is response, the action you take to feed your craving. You crave to be entertained, so you turn on the TV. And that leads directly into the reward, the end goal of every habit, the response to your actions. Um, so the reward either satisfies us or teaches us in some way. You turn on the TV and now you're entertained. And down here, there's a little graph just basically showing what I have up top. Cue, craving, response, reward. Um, and according to James Clear, all habits proceed through four stages in the same order. So one, two, three, four, cue, craving, response, reward. And moving on with the next bullet, feelings of pleasure and disappointment are feedback mechanisms which help the brain determine what actions are worth remembering or worth dismissing. If a behavior is insufficient or unsatisfying in any of the four stages, a habit will not form. So this kind of goes into how, if you want to create a good habit, or let's say simply a habit that will last you a lifetime, then you have to consider all four stages of creating a habit. There has to be a good cue to perform the habit, to crave the habit, and then the craving has to be strong enough to take action, and that action has to be uh, worthwhile or good enough to give you a pleasant result. And with this, you can form a habit. So he gives a few examples in the book. So and cue and craving are part of a problem phase, and then response and reward are part of the solution phase. So that's a good way to kind of split it up. You want to create a problem, and then you also want to have a solution. So let's look at the first example he's given. For Q, your phone buzzes with a new text message. What is a craving? You want to learn the contents of the message. The response, you grab your phone and read the text. Reward, you satisfy your craving to read the message. Grabbing your phone becomes associated with your phone buzzing. So next one, Q, you wake up. Craving, you want to feel alert. Response, you drink a cup of coffee. Reward, you satisfy your craving to feel alert. Drinking coffee becomes associated with waking up. So next one, Q, you smell a donut shop as you walk down the street near your office. Craving, you begin to crave a donut. Response, you buy a donut and eat it. Reward, you satisfy your craving to eat a donut. Buying a donut becomes associated with walking down the street near your office. Q, you walk into a dark room. Craving, you want to be able to see. Response, you flip the light switch. Reward, you satisfy your craving to see. Turning on the light switch becomes associated with being in a dark room. So those were some pretty good examples. So they helped me basically um, set up a few habits of my own, which I'm going to discuss after finishing up this page. So the final part is the laws to create good habits. So it's just summarizing what I said earlier. Make it obvious, which is the cue. You have to make it attractive, which will be the craving. You have to make it easy, which is a response. And then you have to make it satisfying, which is a reward. And laws to break a bad habit, which is the inverse of what I just said. Make it invisible for the cue, make it unattractive for the craving, make it difficult for the response, and make it unsatisfying for the reward. So that covers up chapter 3. And as an exercise, I try to set up a few habits of my own. And let me just zoom in a little bit. And in the book, he also kind of gave this little excerpt to uh, ask yourself some questions when you're trying to create a habit. So, how can I make it obvious? How can I make it attractive? How can I make it easy? And how can I make it satisfying? So, we're going to use the same example that I used in the last chapter. So, I want to be an athlete who's an expert in Muay Thai and boxing. For an athlete to be an expert in these sports, he must train 3 to 4 times a week, which includes sparring sessions, and he must learn the art of war and the best ways of recovery. So the habits that I want to create is train 3 to 4 times a week, including sparring sessions, and read strategic books like The Art of War. So let's look at the first habit, training. So how can you make it obvious? You could do 5 push-ups as soon as you wake up. You could make it attractive by taking pictures in the mirror of your progress. You can make it easy by creating a list of exercises slash sessions you need to perform and go down the list until you have completed everything. Start over or refine once completed. So to kind of explain what I'm doing here is I follow a push-pull-leg format for exercising. One day is push, the next day is pull, the next day is leg. And for each category, I have written down a bunch of exercises. For push, you could say bench press, you could say push up, you could say dips. Same thing for pull and legs. And what I do is whenever I'm going to exercise, I look at that list and I pick an exercise for that category. And when I perform that exercise, I put a tick mark next to it on my sheet, my whiteboard. And then the next time it's a push day, I will do an exercise that doesn't have a tick mark next to it. And I will repeat this process until all exercises have a tick mark next to them. And then I will erase the tick marks, I will refine the board if I need to, and then I will start over. So that is a really easy way of setting up your push-pull leg days where you don't even have to think about what exercise you do. You can just look at a list and then just go down the list. And step number four, make it satisfying. When you put tick marks on the list and you're seeing some form of completion or progress, that is automatically satisfying, and you're more likely to want to complete that list. Uh, and once you complete it, that would feel extremely satisfying. So that's kind of the formatting of habit number one. I have, I would say, I've done most of this, but I struggle with the the first step. So I sometimes forget to do 5 push-ups as soon as I wake up, and I don't work out every day. I do it like 3 to 4 times, but I'm thinking about getting a more obvious cue, which would lead to an exercise because right now there is no cue. It's just one day I'm motivated to exercise and I do it, and then the next day I don't. So my bigger thing is waking up in time to actually exercise because I try to work out in the morning because then I have to go to my job, and after my job I have to do college work. So that's something that it's still a work in progress. However, habit number two, I think I've gotten a pretty uh, good habit for it. So read strategic books. So make it obvious. Leave a Kindle already on the bed each night with a book loaded. So the way I have it set up, the Kindle is on a mount next to my bed, so I don't even have to touch it. All I have to do is turn it on, and it's there. Make it attractive. Read storybooks. So read a book that's just not filled with technical jargon or just like what Atomic Habits is. It's not a story. It's more so a guideline. So it's it's nice to read every now and then, but like it's not something you could do consistently. So when you read storybooks, there's a character that you could feel attached to and kind of follow along with. So that's one of my rules for making it attractive, like when it comes to strategic books. Right now, I'm reading a book called Musashi, about Miyamoto Musashi by I.G. Yoshikawa. This is a book I'm reading, Musashi by I.G. Yoshikawa. Make it easy, Kindle on a mount. So what I just mentioned, make it satisfying. Reading good books is satisfying, I think. So it may be different for different people. So you don't have to force yourself to read books then if you don't like them. There's many other forms of getting information. You could even listen to audiobooks if you don't like reading. So there's many options, but this works for me. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up the video here, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.